I am back, and tonight I am going to be talking about international travel and how I've had some weird experiences when traveling outside of the country, and how men in certain places see women as objects and are just weird. And I hope y'all can hear me okay. I'm doing it without my mic again tonight because I just can't seem to keep a good charge on my phone. But anyway, so the first trip I am going to talk about that I took where I had my first crazy experience with men is when I went to Bahrain. And I actually had two crazy experiences there. Oh yeah. So I was thinking I was going to have to talk about three different countries, but two of my experiences was actually in one country, which is Bahrain. And it happened between 2012 and 2014. I can't remember the year. I just know it was after I had my son. So when I went over there, I was staying at this hotel that was very elegant, and it had a lot of Nigerian workers there working on construction. And this Nigerian guy, when I first got there, I think the first couple of days of me being there, because I was there for close to a month. And he, was being polite and pleasant when I first met him. It was like he was happy to see another black woman in the building or whatever. And so he was just being nice. He would do stuff for me, so I ain't think nothing of it. It was all, innocent for the most part, or so I thought. And then in week 2, when I was coming back to the room, getting done with what I had to do for the day, because I was on military orders. And after I got done with work for the day, I went back to my room, and he was sitting there at the door, waiting at the door. I don't even know how he found out my room number, because he had never followed me to my room before. So I don't know how he knew what my room number was, but when I got there, he was waiting. And I guess he could sense the nervousness on me, because I was like, this is weird. But before I opened my room door, I waited for him to walk away. He started acting like he was getting ready to leave and go home and walk away. And as soon as I put the key in to get in my room, he charges back and pushes the door and tries to pull me in the room. And I was like, I snatched away, and I told him, I said, if you don't let me go, I am going to report you. And then he panicked, and he was like, okay, I'm sorry. And he just left. So the next day, I get back to where I was working at on my military orders, and I told him about what happened. And well, I was casually mentioning what had happened, and in the moment it was scary for me, but then by the time I didn't even allow myself to process it. But by the time that I got to the office the next morning, and I was just casually telling them about it, and then they all turned around and started looking at me like, that's serious. You need to go report that. That's not cool. That's not okay. You need to let them know what happened to you so that they can move you to a different hotel. So I was like, oh, okay. Because when I was telling it to them, in my mind, I'm like not seeing it as big of a deal as they seen it. But they were right, because the guy was still working at that hotel. And even when I went back to pack up my stuff after they moved me, I ran into him again. So it was very necessary for me to let them know what had happened so that I could move. Oh, my phone had started dying. Okay. But so yeah, but before I went and told them, before they packed me up to move to a different hotel, I went to go tell one of the guys who worked in the HR part of the place that I was working at while I was on orders. And this man looked at me. I don't know what his thought process was behind it, but he made the whole ordeal like worse for me in a way, because I don't know if it was because he just didn't want to move me and have to do all the paperwork it took to move somebody to another building. And I don't know if they had other people who would come and say stuff just to get moved to this other building, because the building that they were going to be moving me to was actually nicer than the one I was staying in. And a lot of people would always brag on the one that I was being moved to. So I don't know if he felt like I just fabricated some story to be moved to a better building, but I don't know. But anyway, when I was talking to him and I was telling him about it, he was listening at first. And he went off somewhere, did something, came back with some paperwork, and he was like, did that really happen? And I was like, what you mean? What? This is my first time out here in this place. Why would I just make up some junk? But after my reaction to him, then he was like, okay, I was just asking because, you know, people do say stuff to be moved to this hotel. Okay, first of all, if I'm saying something to be moved to another hotel, it's not gonna be, I'm not saying nothing to that degree of where somebody is assaulting me in that manner. Where some big buff Nigerian man is pulling me, trying to pull me into my room to do God knows what. I'm not gonna just fabricate nothing like that. But he did the paperwork, I got moved, whatever. So that was my first experience with something like that happening. And Glow, when she was sharing her video, I think it was the day before yesterday, like she didn't name Bahrain, but she did name Italy, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to, you know, share my story too, of places where you go and like Black women especially are like objectified or fetishized. I think I said it right. I don't know. And so my second incident, it wasn't that bad, but it was still very disrespectful. I didn't know until I was sharing that story with some people there at that base that is a regular occurrence. So apparently, and I haven't studied this or researched this myself. I think I looked it up briefly back in that time when I first heard about it, so I can't fully remember how it goes. But apparently, men, the Middle Easterns from Saudi Arabia will come over to Bahrain on certain days throughout the week to do all their sinful things, because the God they serve can't see their sin when they're in Bahrain. So they'll come over to Bahrain to do that. One day I was walking down the road back to my hotel, and two Saudi Arabians were, you know, hawking me down or whatever. And I was like, what are y'all doing? And it was just weird. So one of them came and they like tall and like kind of big, like they just seem intimidating by that, with that height and the, like, I don't know. And then the voices and it just whatever. So one of the guys came over, and I could tell they were kind of young. Well, younger than me. And goodness, I might need to get me some water. But so one of the guys came up to me and he was like, my friend want to go on a date with you. And I was just like nervously smiling. I was like, no. He was like, please go on a date with my friend. If you go on a date with my friend, we'll give you this car. And it was like a candy apple red Mercedes. He was like, you can have this car if you go on a date with my friend. And I was like, no, thank you. So I was telling this, I was like, I just had that happen to me. I had this happen to me yesterday, because I was telling them this the next day at work. And it was a girl, she was saying like, yeah, They do that out here all the time because most of them rich, got a lot of money, and then over here in this country, they get the cars for way cheaper than you can get them in the U.S. So they just give them away like candy because they can get enough, they can get as many as they want, and they do that to a lot of people, especially, you know, black women. They do it, especially if they think you Ethiopian or something like that. You know, that's what they do, and it definitely probably wasn't going to be a date. It sounded more like a exchange for sex or something like that. I was like, oh my goodness. But I think that was my first international trip, and it was just so, I had never experienced something like that. So I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, that was the experience that I had. And so my latest experience was when I went to Italy last year, June, and I went to Rome by myself, you know, just to challenge myself to venture out to see how far I could go from the train station without being afraid of being alone, because I plan to take a lot more international trips by myself to really just explore the world like I've always dreamed of doing. So I was walking from the train station down this little path, and when I was crossing the street, it was this guy, like he was in like 40 or late 40s, early 50s or whatever. He spoke to me when I was walking by. I said, you know, wave, smile, or whatever. Like he was behind me, and I waved, smiled back at him, whatever, and kept walking. I kid you not, between me waving and smiling at him, like it was a good, like maybe like 30 seconds, I say. I looked down after I did that, looked down, following my little map and my GPS that I had in my hand to see what places that I could visit, little monuments to stop at. And then I look up from doing that, and this man is coming from a side alley in front of me, and he's like, I can't remember all of what he said, but we were both using our phone to translate, and he was just asking me way too many questions, and he was like, can we, because it was in the daytime, he was like, can I go take you to have lunch? Can I go take you to get something to eat? And I was like, no. He was like, well, how much longer are you going to be here? I said, actually, I'm going to leave now. Like, I hadn't planned to leave that early, but I was like, oh, yeah, it's time to wrap this up. I'm here by myself. I ain't got time. And the way he came out of that alley on me, I was like, yeah, it's time to go back to this train. So I just told him, I'm going to leave now. And then I started headed back toward the train. And I just sat in the train station because he was Sicilian, and he was like, I can't remember everything he said, so I don't want to just say some words, but he was just coming on to me way too strong. And you could tell, like, even though I can't remember the exact words he used, but I could tell, like, I was being fetishized. However you say the word. I could tell he had a fetish for black women. I could tell by the way he was talking. Doing a translate, I could tell by what I was reading. I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, yeah, it's time to get out of here. It's time to go. It's time to go. And I was just like, it's crazy. But in her video, like, she was talking about how she was in this one place. I think she said the Czech Republic. I think that's how you pronounce that. I'm barely functioning right now. I'm so tired. Y'all, I don't know if y'all noticed, but you know, anything new, right? I've been on the road today. I went and got my hair done, and I'm tired. But yeah, she said that this I think she said she was spit at, if I recall correctly. I was like, that's crazy. Like, the way in some places where they still treat black women disrespectfully is like, wow, or objectify us, or you could tell we're just like a fetish for them. And it's not to say all men are like that in these countries, but it's just like, for a great amount of women to have these type of experiences, it's just a cause for pause, and to make you to really think, like, and to be aware of where you're going and where you're traveling to, and what the culture is, and who you're dealing with when you go to these places. But it's crazy. I had a fun time when I was out in Italy. I went to Rome, I went to Milan, I went to Venice, and that was the craziest of the experience that I had with men out there. But yeah, like, I did have another experience, but it was stateside, and it was with, well, two German men, not at the same time, but where it was like a fetish. One German man was like, he was smiling and flirting with me and was being disrespectful to all the other women around. And so I just asked him, I said, why are you being so mean to them? And like, they're not treating you no differently than how I'm treating you. And he just bluntly said it. He was like, because I want to help you. And I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, so you only being nice to me because you want to sleep with me? And he was like, yeah. I was like, oh, it's time to go. And then the second German guy at another different time, this man snatched my food. And I hate to say the stereotype, but you know how some black women get about their food. Don't play with their food, especially when they're hungry. He snatched my food, ran across the cafeteria with it, and I was like, where you going with my food? He said, I'm sitting at my table so you can bring your fat A over here. I was like, what? That was when I was 30 pounds heavier, and most of my weight was in that area. And I was just like, but before I could say something, it was another guy, it was a white guy, that kind of just stepped in on my behalf. He was like, you out of your mind, man. Why would you say that to her? Why would you do that? Give her back her food now. He's like, oh my, he started trying to laugh. Like, oh my bad, I didn't mean to be disrespectful, blah, 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 blah. I was like, I know this can't be how they treat or act with women in their country. And I mostly feel like both of them were so bold in doing that with me because I'm a woman of color. But yeah, so that was my little story time about my crazy experiences when I was out of the country and in country with men from different countries. So yeah, so just be aware, ladies, when you're traveling. Stay safe. I'm not sharing this to deter, like, or have anybody feel a way about going to these places, but it's just good to be aware. And that's all I have. And if you're new here, I'll just say my name is Latrice. Here's what I think out loud, reflect honestly, and name patterns that keep us stuck. And I did say I was gonna be sharing stories this week, like up until my birthday or whatever, but I don't know. I'm kind of steering away from that. I don't know. And it could be because I'm tired too. I don't know. But I did, today was my first time listening to Fold It All the Way Through. And I was listening to that song and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the metaphors. Why ain't nobody been talking about this more than what they've been talking about this, besides the point of it being like a breakup song? So I was gonna talk about that in this video, but about what I took the words to mean as, but I didn't get to print out the papers, and I'm tired. I don't feel like talking about it no more. I might talk about that in the next video if I don't. I haven't decided on what story or have a story to share in the next video. But anyway, enough of me yapping and rambling, and I will be back tomorrow.